welcome here to the home of Yanda's Felix champion and Ferrari's biggest fan, as we are reporting from the North America for the second time in the 2025 Formula 1 season, as the title fights are heating up over here. So let's head right down to the track, named after one of Ferrari's biggest heroes. Obviously, welcome to Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. This is obviously now for the second year running our traditional race reaction to this round 10, the Canadian Grand Prix of the 2025 FIA Formula 1 World Championship, as you can see over there behind me. Yeah, and I have to say that obviously, this race, has provided some amazing drama. So, we will take a look at it over here with this Scuderia Red Retina iMac. I'm sure you guys will be absolutely, loving, the reaction, especially to the race and what we should have done to be celebrating here with this shiny golden Formula 1 Grand Prix winner trophy, to be putting on the shiny golden Paris 2024 Olympics, medal, because, I do believe, especially if we've gotten a better qualifying, and if we were maybe a bit lucky, with the situation and maybe some crashes between the main title protagonists so far in the season, I believe we had a great chance, to win the race. And obviously, if the animals would, prefer to watch the race instead of, trying to race the cars, as in the case of Lewis Hamilton, we could have, maybe even score a memorable 1-2. Obviously, you can see with this beautiful SF1000T N18 Formula 1 Racing Simulator, anything is possible. So, we will break it down, and we will take a look at it, sadly, how the race finished, because it did have not maybe a lot of implications in the Formula 1 Drivers' Championships, but a lot of implications in the Constructors' Championship, sadly for us, for Scuderia Ferrari. So, from our perspective, I have to say that we were pretty much on the pace, right from the go, even though obviously Leclerc, it didn't help the, his cause, the fact that he set a really competitive time and then bang, hit the wall in a rather strange manner, but they really ripped off the, the suspension. So, he was done for the Friday running, as you've probably seen, basically that was, heading into, that segment, I believe, that should be the turns, the turn 4 and 5. It's very unusual that you hit that in the wall, but obviously, once you miss, the braking point slightly, the track is green, right, the wheels look up, you have to go across the grass, but definitely not hit the wall there. So that was a big mistake, but I felt Leclerc recovered from it really well. Hamilton was always on the pace. Remember, Lewis Hamilton has won here multiple times. He's a seven-time, I believe, a Grand Prix winner here in Canada. Michael Schumacher's, for example, been winning here for 6 times, as well. So, the 7 times champions, they really excel at this track, where you have to be very precise, as you're hitting the curbs and everything. So I was really happy, with Hamilton's performance. And it was building up in the qualifying, and in qualifying, especially the qualifying 3, it really unraveled, because remember, for example, in qualifying 2, Leclerc, was there, at the top, you felt like Hamilton was definitely gonna go to the second row, maybe even the first row, and even though you can overtake over here, recently, maybe in 2022, obviously with the introduction of the ground effect era cars, it was a bit easier to overtake, but now, everybody's figured out all the tricks, and it's becoming more and more difficult to overtake, just like we had, for example, in that engine formula, that preceded this ground effect era. So, it is not that easy, because you do know, if you have a great traction out of the hairpin, that's the main overtaking zone, you are able to keep, the guys behind relatively easily. And, this is actually, what kind of happened, but again, there would be some overtaking opportunities, right? However, obviously qualifying, on the front row, qualifying on pole position was absolutely critical. And Leclerc actually in qualifying 3, on his first and on his second and pretty much the only run that he had with that fresh soft rubber, he set the fastest sector 1, and then coming out of the challenging turn 6 and 7, where it's slippery on the inside, but especially on the outside, he's gotten the snap that I've gotten several times. It cost me, for example, in the 2023 the race, race because, I spun there and, then I got hit by Bottas and, I basically retired on the spot, right? I was also spun by Hamilton there, I believe in 2016, 2016. I was really furious about it. So that's a challenging corner, and sadly Leclerc has gotten behind, the racing bull of Isaac Hadjar and, a bit of a dirty air, obviously, he just planted his foot, that made all the difference and he was unable, to then keep the beautiful scarlet red Ferrari, pointing straight and as a result, had to abort the lap, didn't have enough fuel, so had to line up 8th, right? Hamilton did improve a little bit, but still was a couple of tenths down, so that was a bit disappointing. I felt I haven't really seen that much of his lap. I felt, we went a bit too early with Hamilton. I was surprised that we did 1 lap and then just went to the pits, even though we could have recharged the batteries, go for another one, because it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, you already used the tires, but yeah, I believe that would have been a better strategy. That's what I always do, and probably Hamilton would have then been able to be on a second or even on a first row, right? And then the race, complete opposite of obviously what happened last year, because it was raining, it was a beautiful sunny day, it felt like in the tropics because the track temperature was at 50 degrees Celsius, right? Which meant that the tire degradation was very high, especially as Pirelli obviously brought the, the C6, C5, C4 compounds, so they were the soft, medium, and obviously hard, and last year it was the C5, C4, C3, so basically, it required 2 pit stop, even though some guys like Ocon and Sainz, made it into the point just stopping 1. So the interesting thing is that Leclerc actually wanted to just 1 stop it because he and Norris again, fumbled in the qualifying, right? Started 7th. They both started on hard tires, and then of course, you had the 2 main protagonists. So Russell on pole position and Verstappen, right? Everybody expected that there are gonna be some fireworks and Verstappen's gonna get banned for his home Grand Prix, or the home Grand Prix of his team, the Australian Grand Prix, at the Red Bull Ring. But that didn't happen. Verstappen attacked George a little bit, but basically, people had it under control. So it was really a tactical race, right? So you had the first 6 drivers being on the mediums. Alonso quickly dropped off with at around lap 10. He started losing obviously the pace as the Aston Martin is not competitive, even though he still finished 7th. So he dropped, was quickly promptly overtaken by Norris and Leclerc, and the top 7 drivers, as you would expect, had varying different strategies, right? And around that time when Norris has gotten past Alonso and then Leclerc, you saw that Hamilton started to get a little bit slower. Do you know why? Man, because he hit the ground hook, right? So, you could, for example, maybe recall when Vettel was fighting, with Hamilton, that he was saying, hey, there were, the 2 love seagulls, over there at turn 1, just basically kind of kissing each other or something. So they knew lots of the details. So the animals, are a bit of an issue because obviously it's a man-made, that Ile Notre Dame is a man-made island, right? So, it's a water all around it. So sometimes, you do have some animals, just go on the road, and you wouldn't believe, when that groundhog, when it was hit by Hamilton, he didn't even notice, right? But it ripped off a bit of a hole, in the floor of the car, and actually it meant, then Hamilton lost like 10 or 20% of the downforce, so roughly half a second a lap, and he was pretty much out of it, right? So, he would finish obviously the last of the top runners. Then also, once he got overtaken by Norris, who obviously had, the hard tires, that they started working after lap 10 much better. It was clear, that we stopped Hamilton a bit too late, and then, simply the strategy, the medium hard, which I believe, was the best strategy over here. Didn't help Lewis, which is a real pity because otherwise, Hamilton was pretty much on the tail of Piastri. I do believe if we went for the undercuts, which worked really well for Red Bull, for Verstappen, I do believe that we had a great chance to actually, come up with a very competitive result here at the circuit Gilles Villeneuve, because the undercut was powerful. Antonelli twice attack Verstappen, amazing 18-year-old, attacking, from the 3rd place to the 2nd place, and Verstappen just promptly pitted and basically maintained, his 2nd place, and then Antonelli was unable, to challenge him in that final stint. So, that basically tells you the power of the undercut over here. Not that much, but when you within a couple of seconds, you could definitely, challenge the guy in front, especially if it's only 18 seconds, and if you really get the pit, entry and the pit exit right then. stay on a mark if the pit stops just 2 seconds like we've always been. That would be great. Leclerc, great strategy, was leading the race, twice, right? So Norris always stopped a little bit earlier, but the McLaren, that strategy of going hard, medium, hard was actually better for Norris than Leclerc's hard, medium. Leclerc actually just wanted to stay out. The only issue was that Russell was catching him. He would then overtake him. So, I mean, if he's getting overtaken, one of the issues is that obviously, you're not then gonna be fighting for victory. So I guess that's what led the Ferrari strategist over here to decide, to put Leclerc on the hards again, which seemed to be, pretty good. But what it also meant was that after the second round of pit stops were done, he was leading, right? And then Russell, Verstappen, Antonelli, they were unable to really catch him. But then he really had to stop for the mediums because you cannot run the same compound until the end of the race. And then we really expected that within the last 15 laps, Leclerc would absolutely explode and overtake everybody. But that didn't happen because he simply didn't have any pace on the tires. And that was a real pity because the Canadian Grand Prix really came alive in the final, 10, especially the 5 laps, especially when that fight for the third place between Antonelli, Piastri and Norris, has then really heated up. So imagine if Hamilton was there, right, Leclerc was there. I mean, we could have fought for the podium, and then, Verstappen was always vulnerable at the end of the stint. So, could have gotten him, and it would be interesting, if we could have challenged Russell. He did seem to kind of have it under control, but especially with the back markers, you could have gotten within the DRS, and some brave opportunistic move. Like, for example, what Norris put on championship leader Piastri into the hairpin could have been, all that was really needed to win the race. And it was exactly that move at in the middle of the lap 66 that really set up, probably the most controversial moment in the 2025 championship, especially the Drivers' Championship, as, basically both McLarens, so the both orange cars behind Antonelli, with the DRS going head to head, Norris got a bit ahead, going into the chicane, which obviously, is flanked by the wall of the champions, but then, Piastri had the inside line, but then he was compromised, and then Norris made the same mistake that Hamilton made when he was fighting Button. And I think this is a really, critical, both in McLaren's, this time orange colors, before it was in the silvers, of course, in 2011. And you can see that, Hamilton really made a mistake hitting Button, cost him dearly. And here Norris made a mistake hitting Piastri, going for the inside. It is not really there because the track goes this way. So, of course, the driver will go that way. So, Norris definitely at fault for that. But it also meant that we were then promoted to the 5th and 6th place. Now, obviously, if, they would have gotten hit, and we were right up there, then Piastri, as a precaution, because I believe he would have a slow puncture from that impact, he had to stop again under the safety car. But if we were closer within 10 seconds, that could have promoted us to 4th and 5th. But yeah, obviously, we had to simply qualify better, probably go for a better tire strategy and make sure no animals, hit us. Because, I do believe we had, at the points we look, especially with Leclerc, like the fastest, car on the track and could definitely win. But yeah, that's very interesting because remember, Hamilton then only lasted 1 more season and then moved to Mercedes-Benz. What will happen to Norris? Where will he race in 2027? You see, so, if you know Formula 1, you know what this means. So let's take a look at, how on this beautiful Scarlet Red Retina iWave, how, the race actually finished. Obviously, the cars are much closer over here in terms of the lap times because of the safety car, right? So I was hoping that Verstappen wouldn't do anything crazy, under the safety car. There were some shenanigans, so we had lots of investigation because, Russell kind of brake tested Verstappen and he kind of overtook him a little bit, right? And that would be 2 penalty points and he would be banned for the Austrian Grand Prix. Didn't happen for him, obviously, but lots of the drivers were under investigation. Of course, they didn't get penalized because it was after the race finished, because there are still, the car was still there, right, in a sector 1, the Norris is stricken the McLaren without that front left wheel, so you are actually obliged, you cannot overtake until you get to the sector 2, so 7 cars, including Antonelli, for whom obviously first podium, that would be, real pity for the 18-year-old to lose it. They were under investigation, but in the end, obviously they kept the same result. Russell also back the fastest lap of the race, but he obviously will not, get any points for that. You can see Verstappen finished second, as we said, third, Andrea Kimi, Antonelli. Fourth, then Piastri, extending his championship lead. Fifth, Leclerc. Sixth, Hamilton. Again, another okay result, but obviously with Benz doing so well, that cost us second in the Constructors' Championship. 7, Alonso recovered well for Aston Martin. 8, Hülkenberg, he's on quite a run and really carrying Sauber up the standings. 9, Ocon, and then Carlos Sainz, made it from the back. Albon this time had a torrid strategy when they ran medium 25 laps. He lost all the positions, whereas Sainz did well to run the hards, like Leclerc wanted for, I believe, over 50 laps, and then you can see it catapulted him up in the standings. So over here, let's take a look at the Formula 1 Drivers' Championship for the 2025 season. Obviously, they kind of, added a little bit more over here of the details, but we can see that Oscar Piastri for McLaren is leading with 198 points. Second, Lando Norris, 176 points. Third, Max Verstappen, 155 points. So then we have fourth, George Russell. Obviously, he after Piastri, Norris, and Verstappen is the fourth Grand Prix winner. Obviously, Hamilton also won the sprint, so 5 out of 20 drivers, 1/4 of the drivers, or 1/5, depending if you're looking at the Grand Prix or Grand Prix and a victory, already tasted victory this season. So for George Russell, 136 points. Fifth, Charles Leclerc, 104 points. 6, Lewis Hamilton, 79 points. So we consolidated, but again, that's not the result we were looking for, because we lost ground to especially the 3rd and 4th place and to the leading quartet. 7, Andrea Kimi Antonelli, 63 points. And then we still obviously have 8, Alexander Albon, 42 points, despite the bad result. 9 is now Esteban Ocon with 22 points, returning to that position. 10, Isaac Hadjar, 21 points. 11, Nico Hülkenberg, 20 points. Could he put Sauber into the top 10? He is looking very, very strong. 12 is then Lance Stroll. Terrible race for the home hero, 14 points. 13, Carlos Sainz, 13 points, picking up points race by race. 14, Pierre Gasly, 11 points. 15, Yuki Tsunoda, 10 points. I mean, that second Red Bull seat, it's a disaster, right? Look at 16, Fernando Alonso, 8 points. He's really pummeling up the standings. And 17, Oliver Behrman, 6 points. 18, Liam Lawson, 4 points. 19, the Formula 2 Formula 2 champion Gabriel Bortoleto, still yet to get off the mark with 0 points. 28, Franco Colapinto, for his first strong race of the season, 0 points. Fought with Albon, big fight for the 9th place, but ultimately finished outside of the points. And 21st, Jack Doohan, 0 points, who didn't contest the Grand Prix. So this is how it looks like over here in the Drivers' Championship. Let's take a look at the Formula 1 Constructors' Championship. So in the Teams' Championship, McLaren is leading with 374 points. Mercedes now overtook us. They are at 199 points. We are third, Scuderia Ferrari, 183 points. So we lost quite a lot of ground. Obviously, we scored 22 points. Mercedes scoring 14 points. That's an 18-point swing. You can see that, we are 16 points behind them. But hey, we are going to go to Austria, Great Britain, and I do believe that we have a better pace than Mercedes. With the Red Bull, maybe I believe we will be able to beat Verstappen very shortly, and also being able to beat the McLaren. So we are there, but obviously we want to be closing in on McLaren's. At least we made up 10 points on them. Fourth is then Red Bull Racing, 162 points. And fifth, Williams, 55 points. Sixth, Haas, 28 points. 7 is then Racing Bulls with 28 points. 8, Aston Martin, 22 points. So Alonso is probably gonna steal that position of the point scoring leader from Stroll very, very soon, maybe even at the next race. And 9, Kick Sauber, 20 points. They really are trying to keep up, especially obviously with Racing Bulls and Aston Martin. And 10, Alpine on 11 points, kind of look in a no man's land, but anything can change. You can see it's a very, very exciting, especially at the bottom of the table. Lots of points getting for lots of teams. So yeah, that's definitely a good omen. And hopefully this Canadian Grand Prix, where McLaren didn't have it easy at all. It was probably the first race that they were easily beatable. That you didn't have to put everything together perfectly. So I think just like last year, right? The turnaround started here at Canada, and what a cracking season that was. So that was the Drivers' Championship, Constructors' Championship, Drivers' Championship, and here we obviously have the winner, Russell. Congratulations, to him, but this is not the result that we were looking for. And yeah, without it, I hope that you guys enjoyed this race reaction to the Canadian Grand Prix, the 10th race, of the season. We are now off to obviously celebrate, our happy names day, and then we will be back for that Austrian Grand Prix, as we will go to celebrate our, happy birthday, happy wedding anniversary, right on the day when an Austrian Grand Prix takes place. So wouldn't it be the best gift if we finally could win for the first time in Formula 1 this year? Of course it would! So everybody, I hope you guys enjoyed. This was Jan, the Swelling Sun Champion. We love Formula 1, we love Scuderia Ferrari, but now let's enjoy who we are, the real true champions, Ferrari's fast